I am making this video today for two reasons. The first reason is obviously to announce that I am making a game, as was probably apparent from the title. I'm going to name this video something like I am making a game and need your help. Which brings us to the second reason I'm making this video today. I need help, and I thought the best person or people to ask for help is my lovely audience here on YouTube. I feel like you guys are the best people to tell me what I need to hear. The help I'm asking for is not financial. I don't need anybody's money for this project. I shouldn't need any money for the project. Times are hard right now. I think everybody's struggling with money, and I don't think that's what I need to go forward with what I'm doing. And I don't need anybody's charity or services either. Trust me, I get enough people in my DMs every day asking me if I want to buy their artwork or graphics or VFX every single day, and I get that enough to know that that's not what I need right now. I don't need anybody's free work or labor or money. What I need from my viewers today is simply an ear to talk into, to tell you the story of why I'm sat here today making this video and why I've decided I want to make a game, what the game's about, and what you can do to help me make it. But in order to say anything about the project I'm working on, I feel like it's first important to provide a bit of context as to, obviously, why I'm sat here making the video today. And that might take a while. It could take anywhere between 10 minutes and an hour. I'm basically going to list off my life story and say why I became a game designer and why this project is so important to me. If this isn't something you want to hear, and I do recommend you listen to it, if you actually want to help, the best thing you can do is listen to my story and understand why I'm here today. But if you just want to get to the details about the game I'm making, I'm going to put a timestamp like here or here, or wherever I decide. Um, if you want to go to that timestamp, I will explain the game I'm making and go straight to what you guys can do to help me. But before that, I think it's important to give a bit of background. So I'm sorry if I blather on. I'm still not used to this face-to-face style of commentary. I haven't made a script or anything. I'm doing this completely from what I've thought through throughout the day. I've been thinking about this video the entire day and how I'm going to do it. I apologize for a lack of editing, for a lack of studio quality, maybe a lack of mic or camera quality. I haven't really invested into these things yet, but I feel like it's enough to get this point across to you all. So I'm just going to jump into it. If you want to stick around, I'd be greatly, greatly appreciative of that. Thank you very much. I have known I wanted to get into games design for many, many years. From my youngest days, I can remember having a passion for games design. Before even I knew what games design was, I did not even know this was a thing people did. I did not know there are people in this world that make games. I knew that I was passionate about designing games. Around 6 or 7 years old, I can remember doodling on pieces of paper, little board games, card games. I'd design my own top trump cards. I would role play with my toys, like video game scenarios and stuff. So I've always kind of known that making games is something I'm passionate about. But it wasn't until I started high school when it really became apparent to me that I could do this for a living. About halfway through high school, I was excelling in computer science and ICT, and I was playing a lot of video games at the time. I had recently acquired my very own PC, and that was kind of like the floodgates opening for me getting into roguelikes and indie games and really developing my passion for that genre of gaming. I've never really had interest in the AAA games industry, but the second I got onto Steam and tried out Rogue Legacy, which was one of my first mostly played games of all time. I played that game and I realized, holy moly, this is what games can be. Games don't have to be this big, grandiose, hyper realistic shooter scenario. They can be these small, self contained stories with fantastic gameplay, which are simply there to make you feel good and elicit a response from you. And that's when I really ignited my passion for gaming, and I played so many indie games after Rogue Legacy. I started with Nuclear Throne. I played The Binding of Isaac until completion. And bear in mind, I was still really young at this time. I was still 15 or 16 when I completed The Binding of Isaac. I played Terraria, Minecraft, all sorts of small well-known indie games because I wasn't really into the niche indie game market at the time, but it kept growing and growing this fiery passion to like design games, and I may have looked into it a couple times. I might have made a couple games in like Scratch or maybe Game Maker Studio, but I hadn't really considered the possibility of me making my own video games until my final 2 years of high school came around. This is like in the UK, in the final 2 years of high school, that's when you get to pick like the subjects you want to like truly focus on. I don't know if it's in the final 2 years or final 3 years, but we got to pick our subjects, and a newly introduced module for high schools at the time was CEDA, which is the Certificate in Digital Applications, and this covered like game design, web design, all of the like design-centric elements of ICT and computer science. So I jumped at the opportunity. I was so excited to actually learn how games were made and learn like how I can make my own games and how I can create things online. And about a couple weeks into that course, my teacher like realized I have a gift for this. I was designing more games than he had initially planned us to. I was attending the after school clubs to make my own games and spending time away from school, like all the time, downloading Game Maker Studio, learning how these things worked. And whilst I wasn't really learning the coding parts of it, I was always designing games in like a notebook, always like jotting new ideas down, playing new games to get inspiration, and like making my own games in and out of the classroom. When the opportunity came around for me to submit a game concept idea into the BAFTA YGD competition, I think I was around 18 or 19 years old at the time. Maybe 16 or 17 still. It's hazy to remember like specific dates of when these things happened, but I think in 2017 is when I nominated myself into, well, I submitted my work into the BAFTA YGD Games Designer Competition, which is the BAFTA's Young Game Designer Competition. And I wasn't thinking anything of it. I thought, oh, I'm just another drop in the water compared to these amazing, talented people that had came before me. There was like people younger than me making games that I'd never even dreamed of making at the time. But I placed my submission, and I was in the middle of another class. I think it was like design technology or something. And he comes into the classroom and he's like, "Oh, can I borrow him for a little bit? I need to talk to him." He took me over to his PC and he showed me the email he'd been sent, and it turns out I had been nominated for the BAFTA YGDs. I was in the Young Designers category for game concepts, and I was one of the finalists for the competition, and I had the potential of winning the BAFTA YGD prize of that year. And that was one of the most transformative moments in my life, is getting that recognition from such a high up source that I could do something special with my talent for games design, for my passion with games design. And I actually ended up going to London for the awards ceremony. I had my own whole booth set up. I'll try and find pictures, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find them from this far back. I had a booth set up for me. We had free food and drink supplied. It was amazing. It was such a fantastic and transformative day out for me to go somewhere so important and so influential in my life. And I think that's when it really hooked to me that holy moly, I could be these people I look up to. I could be the next Toby Fox. I could be the next like big indie game developer. And at this time in my life, like Undertale was a big inspiration for me. I know people might hear that and cringe a little bit because obviously Undertale had developed a bit of a reputation, but it was one of my favorite games at the time. I loved the developer. I actually loved the person behind the game, and I thought if I could make people half as happy as Toby made me with Undertale, I would be content in my life and I would die happy. So from that day onwards, I committed myself to designing games and one day publishing a game and hopefully people playing it and having a great time and just making people smile with what I do. So after high school wraps up, I do really well in my games design course and I get the required qualifications to go into college and study games design there. And of course, I went to the college in Wakefield to study games design and development at the bachelor's level, I think, or maybe it was a level 3 diploma. But I went there to continue my games design study. My goal was to like study it in college and hopefully use that leverage to get like a job in the industry. I've heard that the college sort of like advertised itself as like giving its students the chance to get into these industries. Like, I think Sega had a game studio that was endorsed by our college. There was Sumo Digital, I think, as well. There was a lot of opportunities. Like Rockstar Games was nearby at the time as well. So I went there with the hope of one day getting a placement in the industry and actually getting that hands-on experience. I went through, and a lot of it was art driven. There was like an art section of the course, there was a design section, and there was a programming section. And I did relatively okay in most of them. Have never been a good artist, and despite my years in education of learning artwork and like draftsmanship, I never really got it right. I've never managed the hand-eye coordination needed to make good artwork. But I made interesting games. I think one of my projects was a 3D platformer. I think there's some old videos. If you go back on my channel, you can see some of like the beta footage of that platformer I was making. And I thought, oh, I'm going to develop this into my first published game. And spoiler alert, that never happened. The game was so much of a mess. There was so much spaghetti code, and I could never get it as feature rich as I imagined it in my head. And that's when I knew I was humbled and I had to start simpler if I was going to start making games. The engine I was using at the time was Unity, and we all know what happened to Unity further down the line. So I'm going to count it as like a blessing that I didn't continue making the game in that engine, or games in that engine in general. Because I think after that point is when I realized that I wanted to make not digital games, but I wanted to make board games. I was really passionate about the analog format. I really liked being able to see and feel and hold the game in my hands whilst I played. I thought the communal aspect of it was really interesting. And I knew that if I was ever going to be a serious games designer, I wouldn't be using a game engine or programming to do my work. I would be using strict design and paperwork and artwork, or anything that isn't, programming. That's what I would be using to make my games, which is why I eventually landed on the format of making board games. Fast forward to when I enrolled into university, I enrolled for the games design development course again at the university level. So this was like much higher, and we were told that there would be much less hand holding, and there definitely was less hand holding. We'd have to do a lot more independent study. We'd have to learn all of this stuff. Essentially without any guidance at all. And it was a really exciting time. But the thing about university is I made like a group of friends in college, and they were like kind of my muse for games design. I would show them everything I did. I would be able to converse with them about what I've made. And there was just genuinely a really good sense of community. But when I was pushed into university to pursue this higher education in the subject I was passionate about, I realized I'm going to be separated from all of these people, and it was much harder for me as an awkward autistic like young adult to make new friends in this really scary and like professional environment. So I ended up going through my first 2 years of university just riding it out on my own and not really like I was performing fine, like my grades were okay. It's just I don't know. I never made friends. I never really talked to anybody, and I was doing it on my own. And just because of how much time the actual subject of like the subject matter of the course entailed, I never actually made games in my own time. I never found time to make games outside of university. I was busy paying my like taxes and rent. I was like trying to find part-time work to try and patch up the holes in my income. I was living home life, and university introduces a lot more than just the actual going to university. It encompasses a whole like spectrum of life that you just haven't done before. So it kind of just ate up all my time, and I didn't really commit myself to making games in my own time, which has really led to where I am today. In my final year of university, I got to pick what I made my final project, and everybody in our course was hyper focused on industry standard like practices. Like they wanted to do 3D environment modeling, they wanted to make first person shooters, they were looking at like Unreal Engine, like Unity systems, like graph based programming, just really stuff which never really interested me as a game designer. And I understand that that's really what the industry asks for these days, but again, my passion didn't lie with the industry. My passions always lied with the smaller, like creative scene, the indie games, the board games, the card games, the stuff that gets less attention, but the stuff which often has a lot more artistic value than these AAA products do. So I proposed that I do a board game for my course, and this is relatively unheard of. Not a lot of people going into university to make games end up doing analog media for their like final project. They'll make an Unreal Engine like game or a fully rendered environment or any number of other like studio standard things, but not many people have actually successfully gone and made a board game as their like final dissertation project. And I pitched this to them and I told them what I'd be doing. I'd be doing like research, I'd be doing all of my own artwork, all of my own production, printing, playtesting. And they accepted the submission. They said that historically these products, when they have happened, haven't been done particularly well and they've been over ambitious. But they were interested to see what I could do because obviously it's not just a computer games development course, it is games design and development. It is encompassing of the whole game design sphere. It's not just programming and Unreal Engine, it can be any number of different mediums and stuff. Gaming is such a broad spectrum that to narrow it down to just Unreal Engine first person shooters, it's silly. And I wanted to set the margin for not just myself, but for people taking the course in the future to try and do something different, to break the mold and to not just do what the other people are doing, but to value yourself as an artist and do your own thing, stride your own path, and that's what I did. The final year, I designed a card game. I designed a couple games before this. I designed one where you were like a steel worker and you had to like essentially melt different metals down into bars, and the person who had the most bars at the end of the game won. Like you got different points for different bars and stuff. I think I have still not on me, but I used to have like these little like 3D printed bricks that I got, which were like meant to represent the ingots that you'd smelt down. I wish I still had this prototype stuff, but it's pretty much all been disposed of. The game that I ended up making for my final project was a game called Monster Safari, and I'm going to show some pictures here, hopefully. It was like I wanted to make a game which could encapsulate what I enjoyed about the Pokemon series, the monster catching, the shiny hunting, the battling, and the different ways that you could interact with these sort of virtual monsters in this world. I wanted to kind of translate that into card game format. So I made a game called Monster Safari where up to four players would embark on this safari where they have been like instructed by like a research facility to catch as many of these strange, interesting animals as they can. Using a variety of different tools. It was kind of like a trick-taking game where you had like 4 different suits of cards which represented different tools you could use to catch these monsters. And each monster had like a stat line which would indicate like what kind of tools are best to use to catch this monster. And each monster would also have like a selection of different abilities, like in the Pokemon games. Like some monsters would make you discard cards, some monsters would make you play your cards face down so other players couldn't see them. And there's like a whole variety of different systems that you could do. And the game, whilst mechanically interesting, was really simple. I kept it down to earth. I knew what I could achieve in the time, and I got to work, and I worked every day, like religiously on this game. This game consumed my life. This was it. I thought this was going to be the game I could publish and make money off of. I thought this would be my entrance into the industry. I was going to take this to game shows, I was going to show this to people, and I was going to be really passionate about it. I would not stop working on this game until it got to where I wanted it to be. I wanted this game on shelves. I wanted this game to be played by people the world over. But obviously, when it's your first proper project, like your first large-scale project, you're bound to get humbled. And trust me, brother, I got very humbled. I'm sorry if I'm blathering on, by the way. It's a lot to discuss. We've come a long way from where we started. I made it to the end of the project, and the game did get finished. I had a fully playable game, and obviously it wasn't without its flaws, but it was a feature finished game. And the artwork wasn't fully finished. I had done a few different pieces of artwork, but as we said before, I'm not the most artistically inclined person. I had to use a lot of assets, like free assets from like a variety of different websites. I used Photoshop to do a lot of my artwork, and it wasn't very good. But I did experiment with a lot of different tools. I used like software called Card Creator to make all of my cards. I printed them all off physically. I laminated all of them, sleeved them all up, and the game was ready to be played. I made it into a print and play format, and I submitted that as my final project alongside a bunch of research and logs of the game testing I'd done. I went to like game testing groups there, which, by the way, if you're a board game designer, go to game testing groups. They're so good. People give you so much feedback, and it's so interesting to sit among other people who want to make games as well as you. Highly recommended. But yeah, a lot of like documentation was submitted alongside this project. And I was like, that's it. This is going to be like a mediocre project. Like they said, these kind of projects don't often do very well. And well, it did do well. It did very well. I got the highest honors possible for that project. I got first class honors for the cause, and I also got nominated and successfully went through as the best project of the year. Out of all the different people who did games design and development that year in university, I got a certificate. I think I can show you it. One second. Yeah, I got awarded the best project for that year, which is one of my proudest achievements. I had struggled through that entire year and thought that I would never get anywhere, but here I was. I had made a project that nobody else had made, and I was rewarded for my hard work. And it was further proof that if I wanted to do it, if I wanted to commit myself to making board games and card games, I could do it. But of course, life happens, and university finished. I graduated, and here we are, 2 years later, and I still have done nothing. I have not made a single game. I have not made a single blog post. I have not made a single YouTube video on anything to do with games design since I finished university. I have been so busy with trying to make ends meet and trying to pay my rent, and frankly, living in this place where I am now, this student accommodation, rent is extortionately high, like higher than anywhere else you could possibly pay, because they assume that you're earning student loan, but we've not been able to move out, and we're not making student loan anymore, and we cannot afford to live here. And so I have been working my ass off trying to find jobs, trying to apply to any kind of games design job with my like first class honors degree, and application after application, no matter how much I would work on my CV and put on my resume that I have done in the past and what I have achieved, nowhere got back to me. I applied to maybe 50 different places, like maybe 100 different jobs, QA testers, design leads, even programming. I would even stoop so low as programming, even though I can't stand it and I'm not very good at it. I just never heard back. I would send hundreds of CVs out, and I just never heard back from anywhere. And unfortunately, with the cutthroat nature of the games industry, it was inevitable. No matter how good you are, it's just a lottery. It's a game of chance. You're never guaranteed to get into this industry, and it was heartbreaking. I'm 2 years out of university. I'm still in student accommodation, and I'm still here. I'm still not a games designer. Still haven't made a game, and I'm not doing anything. I'm not achieving anything with my life. I'm moving nowhere. I don't want to throw a pity party or anything, but it's soul rending to be someone who's so creatively driven and have not done anything with their life for 2 years. It's shattering, and that's why I need to do something. I don't think I will ever be a successful games designer. I'm sort of accepting this fact now. I don't think I'll ever have the popularity or the fame or the luck or the money to be a professional games designer. But I need to make games. I need to do something. Because if I don't do something, I'm going to drive myself mad because I've not made anything in 2 years. So, and I'm sorry if I get emotional, I have to make a game. I really just have to make a game. So that's why we're here today. I sat down and I was like, I'm going to talk to people and I'm going to tell people that this is what I want to do. I want to make a video game. Not a video game, sorry. card game. I want to make a card game. I've been working on this idea for a few months now, and I feel like I'm finally ready. Regardless of how little I know about the industry, or how little I know about professionally producing games, or how little I know about making websites, or blogging, or any of this, I'm just going to start making a game. And this is where I need everybody's help. I'm going to tell you about the game I'm making. I'm going to tell you about my plans for my YouTube channel and for the other things I have online, of how I'm going to document my making this game. And I'm going to let you all know what you can do to help me achieve my dreams of becoming maybe a half successful games designer. So thank you for listening to my story, but now it's time to actually get to the brass tacks and say what we're working on. I'm working on a game at the moment, and I'm not working on anything big. I've decided to start it simple. I'm working on a small party game to be played between 2 to 4 players, and the game's name, currently, is subject to change. The game's name is Quartz. It is a game where players take these like square cards, which are all shuffled together in a deck of say 50 or 60, and they're dealt out to players in groups of 5 at the start of the game. And each player gets one of 4 different like goal cards. This is like how you win the game. Every player sat around the table has a different way to win the game. And there are 2 things in the game. There are the cards you have in your hand, and there are the points you have that you score and take away from yourself and other players. And the goal for each of the 4 players is you can either have 10 cards in your hand or no cards in your hand, and the other players have to have 10 points or no points. And every card, the reason why they are square is that every card can be played in one of 4 different rotations. So on the back of the card, obviously all of the information is anonymous, but on your card, they're split into like a cross, and each of the 4 sections have a different action for the player to respectively take. So when you play a card from your hand, you do the action that faces closest to you, and you can rotate these in your hand and play them in any number of these orientations. But you do the action that's closest to you, and each of the players around the table each have to take the action that points to them. And obviously, the first player to achieve their specific version of winning the game wins the game. But you have to be careful when you're playing your cards and moving towards your objective. Like, you don't accidentally make somebody else win by like making them draw cards when they're almost about to win by having that many cards, or discard cards when they're about to win by having no cards in hand. So you need to be very careful about how you play your cards. And such a simple concept opens like the floodgates to so much strategic thinking. And I feel like if I managed to nail down the mechanical aspects of it and refine the deck of cards, I could really make a really interesting party game about the same scale of a game like Uno, or maybe the same sort of complexity as something like, what's another simple party game? Something like Zombie Dice, something of that sort of size, a very small pocket-sized game, maybe no bigger than that in like a box, but that can be sat down and played in sessions of like 15 to 20 minutes. Just by anybody. Anybody can understand these rules. Anybody can read the simple symbology on the cards and understand what they need to do to win the game. And I feel like this simple idea, I've not seen it done before, and I just thought it would be an amazing way to get my first game out there. So I'm going to start working on this game. What I'm going to do is I'm going to produce it in the print and play format, which is essentially like A4 sheets, which you can print out at a printer and cut the cards out and cut the tokens out and play the game just from having a printer and having ink. You can play the game for free by downloading a PDF and playing it. And my idea is, if people enjoy that, I will produce better artwork, I will produce better quality assets, and I will hopefully get the game published and printed in a small batch of professionally made like games that you would see on shelves in a store. And I want to take these like prototypes and test products to game shows, to game testing nights, to different conventions, and get people to back it and show their support for the project. And hopefully one day, if people have enough interest in this small game I made, I can make even more games, submit them for free, and people can download them on itch.io for free and keep playing them. And if enough people like my work, maybe one day they'll consider backing something I make on Kickstarter. Maybe I do a bigger project, which is actually like a multiple month or year long endeavor, and actually get people support. But as it stands now, as nice as my community here on YouTube is, I have a small community. I don't have the power to like drive a product like that without a significant amount of like personal development and growth first, which is why I'm making this first game, and it's going to be published for free. And every month, I'm going to do a little update video here on my YouTube to sort of document the development of the game and what I'm doing and how I'm testing it. And whilst I don't really have a vlogging camera, hence why I'm using this crap webcam, I am going to try and take pictures and do this style of update video, show you the pictures of what I've been doing to test it and develop it, and generally just keep you in the loop for all of the development process. And hopefully you guys can assist me by showing your support and encouragement, because one of the biggest problems I have as somebody going through depression and anxiety is I get extremely demotivated when people don't interact with what I make. It's like, the best way I've thought to describe this to people, it's like if you were an author and you wrote books and you wrote maybe like 10 books and nobody read them. Like, you can't even get negative feedback. Like, imagine nobody interacted with the books you wrote for so long that you were eager, you were like desperate for even negative feedback. You would like somebody to insult your writing and tell you it's dog shit just because you wanted somebody to look at what you did. Imagine that. And that's what I struggle with game design. I've made a couple like pocket projects before, but I put them out there and it feels like nobody's ever really interacted. And I feel like now I have a YouTube channel of at least some size, a couple hundred subscribers. I think that's good enough to get a sort of train going. If even 1 or 2 people interact with my work and enjoy it, I can keep doing it. I can keep having the motivation to improve and make and create. But if nobody interacts with my work, I just don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I'm going to fall short. I'm not going to have the motivation, and I'm not going to get this thing finished. I'm not going to make it as a game designer. I'm not going to achieve this dream I've had since I was 6 or 7 years old, which is crazy that something as simple as having interaction on your work can fuel such a lifelong dream. So this is where I get into what you guys can do to help me achieve my dream of becoming a games designer. And like I said before, I don't need money. I don't need charity or services. All I need is for the people that are watching this video to maybe leave a comment, leave a nice message of encouragement, and let me know that what I'm doing isn't hopeless. I'm 22 years old. I'm almost a quarter of the way through my life, and I don't want to feel like I'm going to go my entire life without creating something significant, or even like remotely playable. You know, I don't want to go through my life thinking that I'm useless. So if you can find it in your heart to leave a message or comment, tell me some advice or wisdom if you have any of it, or encouragement or support for what I'm doing, that would mean the world to me. I want nothing more right now than the support of other people and a hand on my shoulder to tell me everything's going to be okay. Because sometimes I just stay up at night thinking that I'm going to die without ever having made something. So I need support, I need help, and that is the best way you can do it. And if you want to go a step further and you want to keep up to date with the stuff I'm making and Quartz and any other games I make in general, please subscribe to the channel, press the notification bell, and you'll always know when I've uploaded a video on the game or games I play, or even just an update video. You'll always be updated and you always know what I'm doing. I promise, and this is my promise to you as my viewers, I promise that every month I will update you on the game I'm making. And if you go to my Twitter, I have Hierofate as my handle on Twitter as well. If you go to my Twitter, you can follow me there, and I'll keep updating every day with what I'm doing to make this game. I appreciate whoever made it this far in the video. You are blessed to me. I appreciate you so much. You are the kind of people that I do this for, and I couldn't say thank you enough for what you've done for me today just by listening. You don't even have to comment. You don't even have to like the video. Thank you for watching, and I will keep you all updated. Bye bye, everybody.